Hi, y'all. This is Kristen Chenoweth.
Hi, I'm Gloria Stefan.
This is Sarah Bareilles.
Hi, I'm Patty Lapone.
This is Lin-Manuel Miranda. You're listening to the Broadway Podcast Network.
Welcome back to an all-new episode of the Theater Podcast. I'm your host, Alan Seals, and this is intimate personal conversations with the industry's biggest names. And this episode lives up to that mantra there. Steve Haggard, who is currently Harry Potter in The Cursed Child on Broadway, gets, as he puts it, he gets more personal than he actually intended to. Shares his story about dealing with, I guess, basically the stress and the anxiety of losing your entire industry during COVID and all of that shutdown. But then, of course, we talk about some fun stuff. The show itself, Cursed Child, is just phenomenal. If you haven't seen it yet, my God, like Chris Fisher, the guy who did The Illusions, is part of the National Magicians Guild, and it does not disappoint. It's incredible. So find me online, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, Threads. You know what to do. I bet you're tired of hearing me say this, and if you're not, you must be a newbie. Welcome to the podcast. Now, everybody, please enjoy this episode with Steve Haggard.
Here you go. 1, 2, 3.
Today's guest made his Broadway debut in 2019 as part of the Year 2 company of Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. He's appeared regionally at Steppenwolf Theater in Tribes, at Writers Theater in Witch, The Importance of Being Earnest, Doubt and Old Glory, and many, many others. He's appeared on television in The Chi, Chicago PD, Chicago Fire, and Prison Break, one of my absolute favorite shows, by the way. Steve Haggard, welcome to the Theater Podcast.
Hey, thanks. Thanks for having me.
Dude, Prison Break. I haven't said that name in a long time. That was like one of the first shows I just binged when everything was like coming out on DVD.
Totally. That was a blast from the past. I did that show. I did that show when I was, I don't know, 25 or something. Like that was a million years ago.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess, yeah. I mean, you don't look older than 26 right now.
Oh,
so,
thanks. You know me.
Did I say The Chi? I actually, is that
The
is that
Chi,
right? It's
like
the Chi, that's what I thought.
Chi,
like
Chicago.
Chicago.
Yeah.
Okay.
All those Chicago
It wasn't like
shows.
the Chi, like your energy, centering your energy. Yeah. So you grew up in the Chicago area, right?
I grew up in the Midwest. I grew up in Ohio, actually, in Columbus, Ohio. Which is right in the middle of Ohio, in case you didn't know. But then I moved to Chicago for college. I went to DePaul, and then I just stuck around there for a long time because it's a great city. It's an awesome city, and it's an awesome theater city too.
Well, what got you into like performing arts and theater in the first place? Because I think, well, I don't want to put words in your mouth. Your father is a painter? An artist of that ilk?
Yeah. Well, he is. Yeah, he's a visual artist, but he was also a college professor. He is a smart cookie. He painted and also taught logic and philosophy and something else.
Wait, there are so many people that I think could benefit from learning logic. How do you teach someone to be logical?
I know. Well, it's like I don't know. He tried to teach me, and I read some of the books that he used in his class, that his class used, and I have to be honest. I think I am a bit thick because it's like thought equations. You know, you're like if this, then that, and also, and you know, you're sort of like, you know. The man could do Sudoku in his sleep. He loves the heart of Sudoku. He loves that stuff. Logic puzzles, anything to do with sort of like a set of givens and figuring out what the solution is. I painted and drew for a long time. And it's something that has always been a passion of mine, but he was my inspiration for that. But yeah, I grew up in Columbus, and I went to an all-boys Catholic prep school because the university that my dad worked at was like a sister school, and so we got a discount.
Hey, no shame in that game.
Hey, no shame.
That's what my parents. Side note: I grew up in North Carolina, right? My parents. I was like, I want to go to Columbia, and they're like, no, we moved to North Carolina so we could be residents, and you can use in-state tuition at all the universities. You're not leaving the state. I was like, fine.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, my parents knew what they were doing. So I went to this prep school, which was like intense. It was intense. But then they also had a theater. They had a theater, like a separate theater, and then they did productions. This guy, Doug Montgomery, he's still there doing 3 shows a year, which is kind of incredible, and teaching English. He sort of did it all. He put up these 3 shows a year with us kids, and that's kind of how I got into it. I got cut. Let's be really honest. I got cut from the baseball team my freshman year.
What position did you play?
Well, at that point, I mean, for me, in my head, I was a shortstop, but for the team, I was a designated runner because I was about I was about 4 feet high. I was about 4 feet tall, and I was really fast. And in high school, the weird thing is like you play Little League, and kids are pitching like 60, maybe 70 tops, and then you get into high school, and they're like 80, 90 mile an hour fastballs. And I was too small. I couldn't hit it. I could make contact, but it wouldn't go anywhere because I didn't have the strength. So the coach was like, hey man, we need to talk. And he was like, you can either like sit the bench, you can like lift weights for a couple years, and then like maybe we'll put you in like JV, maybe, something. Or you can just like walk away. And I was like, man, I was like, this is a huge thing for me because like baseball was my life when I was a kid. So like I was like, I'm not gonna sit on the bench. Come on. And I was like, I don't know. My relationship with it had changed, and it had become something that was stressful and not super fun. And it had always been fun in my life. And so this sort of was like the sign that I was like, okay, you know what? I don't think this is my path. And so I sat around for a summer, and my mom was like, you got to do something. So I joined stage crew for the high school. And then like, it was just kind of like where I was supposed to be. I met some wonderful friends, and like man, this is embarrassing. I used to do these impressions, right? Of people like, celebrities, because like I thought I wanted to be like Dana Carvey or something, which is hilarious to say out loud. I don't know that I've ever said that out loud, but it's true. And so I used to do these. Who's
your best one?
I'm not doing an imitation.
Oh, come on, you gotta give me one.
No, no. It's like playing the guitar. If you stop doing it, you just lose it. You lose it.
What about Daniel Radcliffe?
I should work on that. And then so I would do these imitations, and then my friends in the theater, the theater kids, they sort of like surrounded me one day, and they wouldn't let me leave because they wanted me to show the director my imitations, and they kind of forced me to have a little show for him in the theater. And then he cast me in the next play. And then it just kind of like, it was super fun. That's something I really love to do. And then I thought, well, I don't know what I want to do with my life. I might as well go to theater school. So I went to DePaul.
Oh, that's it. That's so cool that like it just randomly kind of took you in that direction. And I talk about this a lot in that something that's perceived as a failure or a shortfall or something at the time leads to something else that you wouldn't have otherwise had you gotten what you thought you wanted or what you initially wanted at the first time, right? So if you had been on the baseball team and your coach hadn't had the foresight to cut you, you could have just kind of been there and been sort of miserable, and now you could be like, who knows, you'd be an accountant in, supplementing your income or in the minor league somewhere. Who knows?
Totally. I think about this all the time. I think about it all the time because there's something... the universe is funny like that. Like it gives you opportunities all the time, and what you think you can't always see, the thing that hurts right now might be the absolute best thing for you.
Well, so I guess opportunity wise then, you were working, I mean, you worked a lot out of Chicago in that area. And then, so coming into Harry Potter now did you move to New York and were kind of doing the New York scene for a while and then made your debut, or did you get the audition and come to New York to make your debut?
Yeah, good question. So I was in Chicago, and like I said, I love it. It's such a good theater town. You can work there. You can do all kinds of work. Um, you can do Shakespeare. You can do what do you feel like doing? There's weird stuff happening. There's classical stuff. There's the whole spectrum. And so it's a great place to get experience. It's a great place to do the art, do the work in a way that you can't always do when there's pressure and money and, all that other stuff involved. And the thing is, like in Chicago, there's just not very much money. So,
Well, not a lot in New York either, but that's
Yeah.
that's the artist life.
Right. But like, I guess what I mean is like the payoff if you get something in New York, it tends to be a little different than
Right.
the payoff that you would get. Because like, and not that you always need to get something from creating art, not that you always need to, I reached a point in Chicago where I was like, oh man, this has been my home for such a long time. And I never thought to leave because I loved it. I loved the work. I loved the people I was working with. I loved what we were able to accomplish and the artistry. And I reached a point where I was like, oh, and I want something else. I want something else. This is a little off topic, I think, from your question, but like, I guess when I looked at my life, like maybe 6 years ago, I was like, I'm not happy. I'm not happy in my life. And I had to figure out like what that was about,
It was about mid 2017 for those not keeping score at home. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. So I figured everyone in Chicago was like, wait a second. But I had I guess I realized like I had some stuff that I wanted to change because my life sort of no longer looked I had crafted a life that didn't have that was really safe, that didn't challenge me, that didn't push me out of my comfort zone. And so I stopped learning. I stopped learning about myself. I stopped being curious about, myself and also like the world. And I was pretty depressed. And I was like, man, I need to figure this out. And so this audition came up. This Harry Potter audition came up. And I was like, that's crazy. That's crazy. I can't believe that. And I read through it and I was like, this is awesome. Totally going to do it, thinking it's a long shot. And then they were like, hey, yeah, come be in Harry Potter. And I was cast in the ensemble. And so I moved to New York. And New York has a funny way of like if you've got stuff you need to resolve in yourself, New York will find a way to sort of bring that out and like be like, hey, here's your stuff. You haven't resolved that. Because
Yeah.
there's so much happening here. There's so much. There's not enough space. There's not enough time. There's not enough anything. So if you've got some unexamined stuff, New York is going to bring it out. And so it was a blessing in a lot of ways. And this job was a blessing. That was a little off topic.
No, it was actually perfect. And it's one of those things that hit you exactly when you needed to be hit by something to change your life, right?
Yeah.
And it's odd to me. I want to ask about, you were in Chicago, and so it was the original cast you joined the ensemble, or was it a replacement? I mean, either way, I guess irrelevant.
Oh,
but,
in The Cursed Child?
Yeah.
I was a part of the second year. So the first year,
right.
And then the second year, the first time they did a recast.
Right. So I guess then I just was curious as to why they went to Chicago to find actors, because I know a lot about the musical theater world, much more than the straight play world.
Yeah.
And after watching Cursed Child, it's it's presented like a movie is. It's got a score. It's got an underscore, the whole time. Like everything, scene transitions have music, and whole scenes have music sometimes, and it's like you're watching a movie, which of course is by design. But when you're doing, the global search for the lead of the whiz, or whatever the case is, it's a very specific thing that you have to go wide for. Is it normal to cast such a wide net when looking for replacements for a straight play like this?
I think maybe for Broadway, and they went to Chicago. They went everywhere. I think they held auditions that first year they did their first recast. They held auditions in LA. They were in Chicago. I think maybe Atlanta or someplace else. And the reason I think why, and this is just me speculating, FYI, but the show, it's such a specific ask of an actor, because it is such a specific play. The language of the show is like you said, there's a score underneath it. It's big. It's a spectacle in a lot of ways, and then also it needs to be grounded in humanity, and the actors need to be able to fill the expectation that the audience comes in with these relationships that they already have with these characters. So they need to fill a certain amount of that, but they also need to be able to ground the world and the reality. And I think that was really, as I see the people that come into the show, they all tend to have that in common. They tend to be able to bring a relatable humanity to the work. And I think that essentially is, that's what we're going for over there, which is like, it's magic and explosions, and it's all these illusions. And then also it's a story about family and friends who are going through some stuff. That's the goal. And I think that's why they wanted to find the right people to step into it for them.
That's really interesting. And I just drew a parallel between this and Back to the Future, actually, which ironically, Chris Fisher, who did some of the illusions for Chris Child, totally. Also did illusions for Back to the Future. But
he's awesome.
I just saw Back to the Future recently and was dissecting that, and it's a story about family at the heart of it, which Harry Potter, Cursed Child also is. So aspiring writers out there, take note that you can disguise anything you want in sci-fi to make it a good family story on the inside. But it's really, it's interesting that you say that. I guess there is very much, there's a lot of specificity to the actors. And I mean, not only do you need to look the part more or less, right? Like the Weasleys have to have red hair, and like Harry Potter's got to have a certain build. And I love how it was all put together. And we'll get to the illusions. And I know you're going to tell us all the secrets because you can. As a child then, I mean, these stories have been around as long, like I'm 43 right now. And these stories have been around since I was early 20s or something. Yeah. It's been around for a while. And so now Cursed Child, this is being billed as sort of like the 8th book.
So it was Jack Thorne and John Tiffany wrote it, and then J.K. Rowling also did some of it, bits and pieces of it. So it is a continuation of the story. It is a continuation of the books. And I guess this is the funky thing about being, like, going back to a little bit what we were talking about before, this is the funky thing about doing a show that, like Back to the Future, like Harry Potter, where people they're walking in with relationships to these characters and expectations, and this feeling that they had when they watched the first movie or they read that first book. I don't know how you get around that judgment. You can't, right? Because people are coming in with a certain amount of expectation, and they're going to sit back and go, well, that's not mine. This isn't whatever. Blah, blah. And so I think our job is to say, hey, we know you got expectations. We know you come. We know, and we're going to like respect those expectations and take them in, and then also challenge them a little bit and say and flip it flip it a little bit so that you can have that same feeling that you had when you read that book for the first time, because that's what those books do really well. That's what Back to the Future does really well. The movies, which is like it's like, hey, here it is, here's what you know, and then it sort of flips it, and it surprises you, and it creates a curiosity in you to go along for the ride. So in the first bit of the show, you have to sort of like, you have to say, hey, this is a continuation, and it's also a new thing. And I think if we're good at our jobs that evening, if we're good at if we're good at our jobs, it really works. The way the story's structured, the way it's written, you end up going on this journey with us and learning something new about the characters, which is, I think, like, it's not just us telling you over and over again the same things you already know. You know what I mean? Like, which sometimes is comforting, and also like, okay, well, why did I go see that? So
Absolutely.
We're giving you the opportunity to step into the same world through a different lens.
Yes, that's what I was going to say. Now that you pointed that out, it makes perfect sense. Hang on, everybody. We're just going to take a quick break. All right, now we're back. We're establishing the world we're in. We're going into Hogwarts. We've got the characters that we always know we've got. We've got Hermione, Ron, and Harry. But then, so we're establishing that, but then introducing the new thing of the children now, like your son and Draco's son are now, become best friends. It keeps this healthy, amazing balance between, you're right, between the nostalgia that so many of us who go to see it have grown up with, and introducing this brand new story and modernizing, bringing like modern themes into what we're watching, while in real life, live on stage, seeing these illusions, some of which I still don't know how you've done. So I think it's absolutely amazing. But I want to go to the length too, because you started in 2019 when it was still 2 parts. It was 2 distinct shows. So you do like a full day, part 1 and part 2, and the matinee and then the evening. Right. So then coming into that, had you ever done anything that intense before? Because that's learning 2 shows at once.
Yeah, Alan, no. I don't know that there was, and I don't. Yeah, and now even in the one part, sometimes, no, it was entirely overwhelming. I've not been in a part of a production that big, but also like, you're stepping into just, this huge ideas, the characters are huge. I mean, like, the idea of being Harry Potter is overwhelming, the idea of like, oh yes, and now I'm walking, like, what are your given circumstances? My given circumstances are, I am going to Hogwarts now to talk to Professor McGonagall. That's wild, So like, and not to mention just the sheer scope of the production. And the theater, I remember the first time I walked into the theater, it's incredible. They completely redid the whole thing, but you feel like you're stepping into the world. You feel like you're stepping into Hogwarts to a certain extent, because like just everything is curated to sort of feel a part of that world. And so
I even like the set change in the lobby during intermission now, but I won't spoil that. But that was cool. All right, go ahead.
But yeah, no, I'd never been a part of a production quite this size, with this many working parts and people. I mean, there is in that building, there is the best group of people and the hardest working group of people, because you do the show eight times a week. We're there quite a bit with each other, and so it takes a good group of people to sort of keep things fun and keep it going in the right direction.
I was going to ask if you had a favorite part, but now we'll caveat this because, of course, there was a pandemic when it came back. It was combined down to just one show. So a
Right.
bunch of stuff must have gotten cut. Do you have a favorite scene or a part that you no longer get to do because of the time shrink?
Ooh, interesting. Good question. Yeah, there's a few things. The funny thing about it now is that I don't recall a lot of stuff because I've
Really?
had to sort of lose my attachment to it in order to do the one part, in order to get through, you know. So a lot of it is either has turned into subtext, or it has I've had to sort of um, put it in the safe for a different time. Oh, there was a dream sequence. I wasn't even a part of it, and it was awesome. I loved it. Um, there was a dream sequence that happened that used to scare the crap out of me. And I would watch it every night because it was so much fun. Because I had to,
Don't you?
I had to,
Don't you love being scared?
yeah, but
Scared
I had to,
safely. Yeah.
I had to transition after that. So I was always like prepped, ready to go for my transition, and I would watch it. It was a Harry nightmare, and Harry was having a nightmare, and he was a kid, and he was in the cemetery with Aunt Petunia, and Aunt Petunia was going off about something, and the all of a sudden there's like this rumble. There's like and this hand shoots out of the grave that they're at, and it's Voldemort's hand, and it was like the audience would go and scream. It was the absolute best. It was such a well crafted scare moment, which I think on stage sometimes is difficult to do. But that it was like so perfect. It was like a perfect little moment, and I loved the fact that you got to see Aunt Petunia. But there's so much stuff, and sometimes when you're in it, you forget what it looks like. You forget just how striking some of that stuff is.
Yeah.
And you hear the audience reaction, you hear the kids. I had this is maybe one of my favorite parts about being Harry Potter in this show is like I had a dear friend of mine came with her nieces and nephew, and they came to see the show, and she was like, "Can you come and say hi afterwards?" I was like, "Yeah, totally." And I went outside, and the kids were dressed in their Hogwarts getup and their, Gryffindor robes and stuff. And we were talking about that. And I said, "Well, what'd you think? What'd you think? What'd you think of the show?" And they said, "Well, we've got a lot of questions." And I was like, "Sweet, bring it on. Here we go." And to get to talk to kids about like what their joy is around those stuff, the illusions, the relationships. They wanted to talk about Snape. They wanted to talk about how we did, this or that, and they wanted to talk about the wands, and like there's a million questions about like particulars around, what this is and what this means and why we did this. And watching that sort of reaction and that sort of like processing of the play is like, that's where I'm like, cool, this is such a good job. This is such a fun job to be able to do.
Total reality to them.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
that's what, when you get sucked into this world through the books, through the movies, through this play, it's like that's that's the feeling that I had, which is like, oh my God, I can't wait till the next book. Like, I want to see I want to see more of Hogwarts. I want to see more of this. What is that, And that makes me really, that makes me really happy.
Something else, switching gears for a second, something I wanted to touch on. During, I think it was mid-2020, you did a motorcycle trip from Washington State to New York City. Is that right?
Yeah, would you see that? What was
My cyber stalking,
Yeah, so I have a motorcycle, and I love to ride that motorcycle, and it has taken me all over the place. It's taken me across the country. I drove out here from Washington State. So I spent a lot of the shutdown during the pandemic in Washington State on the Olympic Peninsula. Because, that was a really hard time for a lot of different reasons. And my sister lives out there, and I had gone through a pretty bad breakup and lost my job because we were doing Harry Potter and we shut down, and I was like, well, I'm gonna go to Washington State. And I was out there with my sister, and I bought a motorcycle during that time and proceeded to ride it all through Oregon and California and Nevada. I got stuck in the Mojave Desert, and went to see some beautiful, beautiful places. And honestly, it was me courting a bit of hardship in order to sort of figure out to have a more authentic relationship with myself, and so when I was a kid, I was like 3. I had this plastic motorcycle, and it was, and I would ride it everywhere, and it was just you foot powered and you zoom down the street, and I fell in love with it. And ever since then, I've always wanted a motorcycle. I've always dreamed about scooters and motorcycles, and during that time, I was like, what have I been waiting for? There's always people telling me, oh, it's too dangerous. Don't do this. Don't do it. Don't do it. Don't do it. And I was like, I'm doing it. So I did. I got it, and I was fortunate enough to have the time and the space to do that. And then when Harry Potter came back, I was like, oh, maybe I'll ship it. Maybe I'll ship it across the country, because I wasn't about to leave it. Then I was like, I don't want somebody else touching it. I'm just going to ride it. So it took me 14 days. It took me 2 weeks. I got stuck in Montana in a rainstorm that lasted 3 days. That was intense. I stayed in this really sketchy motel in this small town of Montana, and for 3 days. And I remember I walked into the reception area, and this lady was eating a sandwich, and I was drenched. I was soaking, and there was water puddles. I was squishing as I walked because I was just soaked, and I covered, in my full motorcycle gear. And she just stops eating. She puts her sandwich down and goes, "Can I help you?" And I was like, "Yeah, I need a room." And yeah, it was there was something about, like I said, that sort of putting a ridiculous goal in front of yourself, or something that's a bit absurd, that sounds exciting, and also probably will come with some problems, your tire blows out, or you get stuck in the rain, or whatever. And for me, that's what this whole experience has been like in New York, working on it. It's oh my gosh, I cannot believe what an experience this is. That's, I think, how I want to approach my work. That's how I want to approach my life. That's how I want to approach, not to sound too whatever about it, but that's how I want to approach every day, which is what's going to happen today? And maybe it's going to be ridiculous, and maybe it's going to be super fun, and let's find out. But I think during that time, I needed that sort of an event to sort of feel some stuff.
It's learning new skills. I mean, if you want to use the analogy of, you don't know what's going to happen. You might blow out a tire, right? So it was on your Instagram account, you posted a picture of your bike saying it's about to go cross country, right? And so in the picture, you've got an extra tire strapped underneath all your supplies in case your tire blows out.
And I needed it too, which is
good.
You?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think, the pandemic and other things, right? You could use the analogy of the pandemic. Not only did your back tire blow, but your front tire blew. You cracked the radiator and you threw a piston, right? The whole industry was shut down.
Yeah.
And then you learn how to fix it and you become your own life mechanic. Horrible analogy.
Right.
But now you learn the skills to fix more as you're moving faster. And if you don't challenge yourself, you're never going to grow. So I respect that so much.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. Hang on, everybody. We're just going to take a quick break. All right, now we're back. And as someone who's also owned 3 motorcycles myself, I do appreciate the ride. There's something about just the open road, man.
It's the best. I mean, it's the best. And it is totally dangerous. And every time I go out, my mom is like, you better text me. You better text me. And I do, but it's like sometimes mom, sometimes I don't. Sorry.
Yeah. I'm going to wrap up with 3 closing questions I ask everybody on the episodes. The first one, just real simply, is what motivates you?
Oh, wow. That's a really great question. Something I think about a lot. So I feel like what motivates me is living as much as I can for living as authentically as I can right now, I spent so much time in my life, I think, stuck in my head, dealing with worries and anxiety and always worried about something else. And I think missed a lot of opportunities. I missed a lot of opportunities for joy, opportunities to enjoy what's happening right now. Mm-hmm. And so I think what motivates me is this like better version of me, not in like a judgy way, but like that guy is in me and I'm going to be that guy someday, and I want that to be a reality, and that starts right now,
I love that. All right. What advice would you give to your younger self and younger people listening now, starting out down a similar path?
Cultivate self-compassion.
Self-compassion.
It is the strongest, most powerful thing that I think that isn't taught. It's not something that's taught or talked about a lot. It's absolutely free, and it's one of the hardest things to figure out for yourself. But self-compassion is the best. And it allows you to have compassion for everything and everyone else. And in that way, making that space for yourself to be who you are actually as a human, full of mistakes and problems and anxieties and all these things, allows you to move past that,
I do know.
I got a little, man, I'm getting a little mystic on you.
No, man. As someone I've done my own therapy journey, I've done my own self-discovery, and you're speaking my language perfectly. So
but that for me, I wish somebody had talked to me about that. That it's so hard. I struggle with that so much in my life. Like I built criticisms in my head. I built whole thing just in my head that were just made up stuff.
Absolutely.
That like I was walking around making life choices about that had didn't have anything to do with what was actually happening. It was just
the reality you craft.
It was insane. And that's sort of, and it all sort of stemmed from me not being able to be like, hey man, it's okay that happened, and you're still, I love you. You're doing all right.
Yeah, learn to forgive yourself. That's the hardest thing I had to deal with. I mean, and it wasn't anything specific. I feel you though. It's just like the criticism. You're like, maybe I'm just not good enough, so I won't even try. And then you end up. It's this circular thing that you can't get out of without help. It's nasty. Oh man, that's a whole other episode. Okay, so last question.
Thanks for letting me talk about it.
Yeah, last question. This one's a lot more fun. If you could only see one show for the rest of your life, but you can see it as many times as you want, what would you see?
One show? Oh boy. Like play? Are we talking about plays?
Any stage show. We'll classify stage show.
Like a specific production, or like I could see this play in different productions?
Specific production.
Okay. I would watch this production of The Seagull that I saw in this small theater in Wisconsin. It was beautiful. But yeah, The Seagull. All right. Thanks. I feel like you're asking me questions that require concise answers, and I'm not giving them to you.
No, it's funny. Some people are like, "Boom, this is it," and some people take like a whole other hour to think through their thought. It's fine. There's no right or wrong.
This is my favorite thing. My favorite thing about plays, though, in theater, is that like it happens in that moment. You know what I mean? Like it, and there's something about it, the nature of it, that like it should feel like it's never gonna get to be done. Like it won't ever happen again. Like this is the only moment.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. That's why I like previews.
Exist.
Because you're still crafting and you're crafting, and then like after you open, script is locked, right? But previews, there may legitimately be a version that you, the audience, sees that literally will never happen again.
Yeah, that's lovely. Yeah, I never thought about that. That's cool.
It's great. It's great. Okay, so where do you play the social media game? How can we find you online?
I'm on Instagram. I'm not very good at Instagram.
Join the crowd.
I'll tell you that. But like, I'm on there, noodling around.
All right, you can find me at thetheaterpodcast.com. I'm on Instagram, Threads, and TikTok at theater_podcast. On Facebook. Leave a rating and a review wherever you are listening to this episode right now. Thanks to Jukebox the Ghost for the intro and outro music. Introduction music. And Steve, thanks, man. Gosh, thank you for sharing. Thank you for getting personal. This has been great. I really enjoyed talking with you.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Thanks for listening to me.
Take a deep breath, make the world a little colorful.